I'll read out the statement as I usually do. Can I welcome all members and officers to this meeting of Development Control Committee, which I have convened as a hybrid meeting. The meeting will be recorded and will be available via the Council's website to view as soon as possible following this meeting. The meeting agenda pack can also be viewed on the Council's website. Everyone participating in this meeting will be attending either by Council Chamber or from remote locations. Please can everybody ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or on silent mode. Members and officers will also speak at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their microphones on at that point. At other times, attendees should keep their microphones off. Please could all members attending remotely keep their cameras on for the duration of the meeting. If any member or officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the top right-hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in order I receive requests. Please lower your hands once I've finished speaking. Please do not use your microphones until I invite you to do so. I would also like to ask officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting this meeting. In the event of a vote, the Democratic Service Officer will call out the names of members in question in order that they can cast their vote either against or abstain. Following the process of the result, the vote will then be announced. I will now proceed to the agenda on the business. Number one is apologies for absence. I've got Councillor David Harrison, Councillor Martin Hughes and Councillor Heather Griffiths. Has anybody got any other apologies? No? Okay. Any declarations of interest? Number 2 on the agenda. Alan?
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Thank you. Personal interest in agenda items 8 and 9. I'm a member of the Bridgend Town Council. I do not take part in any planning matters there.
Okay, thank you for that. Stephen?
Yeah, the same as Councillor Waltham, member of the Bridgend Town Council, but don't play any part in planning matters. Agenda 8 and also Agenda 9, which are both within the Bridgend Town Council area.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you for that. Chris Davis, please.
Yeah, it's the same for me as well, Chair. Member of Bridgend Borough Council and Planning.
Thank you for that. Okay, site visits. To confirm the date of Wednesday, the 8th of the 9th, 24, proposed as an inspection arising from the meeting or identified in advance for the next meeting by myself. Can somebody confirm that, please? Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the interest, one of the agenda item 10, my first time on this committee, one of my constituents is listed as an appeal that I kind of worked on. I don't know if we discussed them or they just get noted, but...
Okay, we'll just note that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, cheers.
Thank you. Can somebody move the minutes of the 27th to the 6/24, please?
Yeah, move, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. We've got public speakers today. Councillor Ian Williams will be speaking. James O'Driscoll will be via Teams. Councillor Belso his statement will be read out. Eric Sullivan's will also be read out, and Jamie Wilson is here in person. He's at the back. Amendment sheet, that's just for noting. Okay, we'll go on the guidance. Noting. Number 8, we'll go on to P24 286 full 30 St Mary Street, Bridgend. Dion, please. Do you want to take this? Pardon? Oh, yes, it's public speakers first. Sorry, yes, I do. Yeah, right. So, number 30. Right, Councillor Williams, do you want to come to the mic, please?
Good morning, Chair, Committee and officers. Here are the reasons for my objection. The development does not meet the criteria set out in the LDP Policy COM7 for the following reasons. The character of St Mary Street remains as a traditional family accommodation. Any degradation of this, as has happened on Awenny Road, Park Street, Cowbridge Road, etc., would lead to unacceptable impacts in terms of noise, car parking, and refuse on adjoining residents. In particular, the change of use of the dwelling to a HMO less than 10 metres from a school entrance could have an unacceptable influence on the character of the street. In this way, the scale and intensity of use would be out of keeping with family accommodation and the school surrounding it. In terms of car parking provision, a 4-bedroom HMO would expect to have 4 car parking spaces. Page 21 of the agenda item states, number 4, bedsits and other forms of shared housing should only be permitted within defined settlement boundaries if the proposal incorporates on-site parking provision or demonstrates that it will not have an adverse effect on local parking provision. This property does not have any parking provision whatsoever. This change of use would have an unacceptable impact on the already overcapacity street, which is often full of town centre workers parking there to avoid car parking charges. There is also concern expressed about refuse, and if 4 loads of refuse are left on the already tight pavement, school children would have a more difficult and dangerous walk to school. I have personal experience of the issues which emanate from HMOs in the locality, as my daughter found herself living next door to the one at 36 Ewenny Road. Having spent a great deal of time and money with help from myself and her father-in-law, they were forced to sell their dream house and move away from the area she'd been brought up in. The constant reek of marijuana, people drinking and trying to get access to the house at all hours of the day and night forced them out. Residents in family homes should not be subjected to this behaviour. As someone who has lived in the local area for more than 40 years, I have witnessed the complete transformation to the demographic of the area from a family-friendly residential area into one occupied by nomadic, unrelated individuals who have no consideration for their neighbours or surroundings, and are the cause of a great deal of antisocial behaviour on Ewenny Road and the lanes backing onto St Mary Street and Grove Road. While it would be wrong to assume that this kind of behaviour would happen at 30 St Mary Street, it would also be wrong to assume that all the residents would not be car owners. This street cannot possibly accommodate parking for any more vehicles. And when BCBC have failed to implement the promised residents parking scheme for more than 10 years, you can understand the anger residents are feeling when they can't park their cars due to the extensive, indiscriminate and inappropriate parking. I know many residents who live close to number 30 have submitted their objections, and I really think it's time for this authority to consider the feelings of people who actually live nearby. It's all very well providing accommodation for individual HMOs, but not in a close-knit residential community, taking away the opportunity for first-time buyers to buy a family home. I regularly have residents complaining to me about the disgraceful behaviour they are witness to when picking up their children from Oldcastle School, and I am asking you to consider this when considering this application, which is 10 metres from the entrance to the primary school, and the strong possibility that this HMO would be no different to the others, and eventually our children and grandchildren will be subjected to unacceptable behaviour by residents living on the doorstep of the school they attend. It should be noted that 29, 33 and 36 Ewenny Road are all HMOs, 3 properties within 20 metres of each other housing 30 unrelated people must surely be classed as over-intensification. I wouldn't be happy with it in my backyard. I'm sure you wouldn't be happy with it in yours. Residents regularly witness fighting in the streets during daytime hours, drinking, defecation in plain view, urination, and a couple even having sex. Safer Streets Partnership have had to install a camera to try and combat it. The police have had to put on extra patrols in the area to try and mitigate what's going on. Thank you for your consideration.
Oh, Donny, thank you very much. I'm not just right.
Okay, that is.
Okay. James O'Driscoll, you are via Teams. James, are you there? Mr. Driscoll? Mark, what? On the call.
Hello.
Right, are you there?
Yep, I'm here speaking.
Right, that's Mr. Evans, is it?
I know it's sorry. I was just logged on my computer and the speakers weren't working, so I had to quickly change onto another computer. Sorry about that.
Right, so you're James Driscoll then, you?
I'm Mr. Driscoll. Yeah.
Right, well, you've got 5 minutes, so when you start speaking, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. So this property has been identified to use as temporary accommodation for adults within the Bridgend borough. D2 already operates in 10 councils across the South Wales area, looking after over 300 people in 75 temporary accommodation units. These range from small 2-bed terraced houses to 10-bed HMOs. D2 already successfully operates 5 temporary accommodation units in the Bridgend borough. D2 manage all of our properties very diligently. Properties and tenants are visited daily by the dedicated house managers to check on their welfare and the condition of the property. Any issues are reported to the housing team, and any maintenance issues are reported to our dedicated maintenance team for action. There will be CCTV cameras covering all the communal parts of the property. Each morning these cameras are checked and a full report is sent to the housing team. We work very closely with the council and report back the activities of the tenants to the council. We have fully trained house managers who keep in contact with the tenants even if they are not seen on the house visit. D2 keeps the houses to a very high standard with a full-time maintenance manager and regular collections of any excess rubbish. We also employ cleaning contractors to visit on a regular basis to assist the tenants in keeping the property clean. D2 operates a very strict house rule structure, which is explained to each tenant once they move in, and they are required to sign a copy of these rules. If occupants do not adhere to these house rules, the information is reported back to the council for them to then act on it. We have a very good working relationship with the team in Bridgend and are in daily contact about all of our houses and all of our tenants. The Bridgend housing team decides who is placed following the discussion on each client's profile. The tenants are not placed on occupation contracts but licenses, and therefore if breaches of rules occur, then these issues are dealt with and the placements can be ended, and tenants can then be moved on to elsewhere accommodation. If issues such as antisocial behaviour occur, then these will be addressed directly by both the house manager and the housing team immediately. D2 operates a 24/7 on-call system for both tenants and neighbours, and this number will be made available. The house manager will also introduce themselves to the neighbours to promote an open and approachable relationship. A level of accommodation that D2 provides for temporary accommodation is done to a very high standard. With the ethos of giving people good accommodation to live in, they will treat it well too. D2 are committed to providing temporary housing solutions to vulnerable people, and we pride ourselves on providing accommodation to those without a safe place to stay. This type of accommodation is far more appropriate than bed and breakfast or hotels and gives the tenant a better chance of maintaining their placement in the property and a greater chance of a successful move on to their own accommodation in the future. We also believe this type of accommodation is a significant cost saving for the local authority compared to the alternatives. D2 want to ensure Bridgend adults are looked after in their community in a Bridgend home. I hope this gives a brief understanding of our service and what type of company we are. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Dion, do you want to give the officers a recommendation?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Committee. For the purposes of this recording, my name is Dion Douglas, and I am a Principal Planning Officer at Bridgend Council. This proposal involves a change of use of a 3-bedroom dwelling into a 4-bedroom HMO. The terrace property is located at 30 St Mary Street, Murray Street, on the southern side of Bridgend Town Centre, and it would be approximately 300 metres to Knowlton Street shops, so it's a close walking distance to the town centre. It's also located in close proximity to Oldcastle Primary School. My report, which has been circulated, describes in detail the proposal, the property and the site location. In short, a new ground floor bedroom is to be created from one of the reception rooms in the property, a communal lounge, kitchen, diner, and bathroom facilities will be provided, along with shared space to the rear of the terrace property for waste storage and secure cycle parking. There will be no additions or extensions made to the building. Representations have been received from the Bridgend Town Council, Councillors Bledsoe and Councillor Williams, and a Town Council member, Anne Lloyd, and they raised concerns over the proposal. 6 letters of objection were also received from occupiers of surrounding residential properties. Concerns raised include highway and pedestrian safety issues, the over-intensification of HMOs in the area, the loss of family housing, impacts on residential amenity, noise and antisocial behaviour, and an increase in waste and recycling on the street. The application has been considered against national planning policy and guidance and the replacement LDP. The application site is located within the main settlement of Bridgend. The proposal would be supported by policy COM6 residential density, and that the development would contribute to a mixed, socially inclusive and sustainable community by providing a range of house types and sizes. The proposal has been considered against policy COM7, houses in multiple occupation, and is considered to be compliant with its criteria. In short, there are no other recorded HMOs within 50 metres of the application property. I've noted in my report that the Uweni Road HMOs are located further than 100 metres from the site. They are in fact about 150 metres away as the crow flies. There are no alterations or extensions proposed which would alter the character or appearance of the property. Thirdly, the scale and intensity of the residential use is considered compatible with the adjoining and nearby uses. The property is sustainably located and secure cycle parking can be provided. Waste storage and closed drying facilities can be provided at the rear of the property. And finally, at the size proposed, 4 bedrooms, it is not considered that the proposal would have an unacceptably adverse impact on residential amenity. The transportation effects of the proposal have been considered by our highways officer, who has no objection to the change of use. It is noted that the property benefits from no on-site parking, however, is located in a highly sustainable area close to town centre amenities and services. It's walking distance to the bus and the train station. Given the location of the site and the nature of the accommodation proposed, it is considered likely that the use would result in a lower car ownership level. If I can give us an example, my 27-year-old son lives in a privately owned 4-bedroom HMO in Cardiff, in Cathays. The terrace property is located opposite a primary school. He travels by bicycle, which is parked in a cycle shed at the front of the property. 2 of his housemates have cars and they must pay for residence parking so that they can park on the street. His 4th housemate does not have a car or bike, so must walk or use public transport. This, in my experience, would be typical of the travel arrangements and choices of many HMO tenants across Cardiff and also Bridgend.
No, you can't.
I trust I have adequately outlined and addressed the key matters surrounding this change of use application. In conclusion, and having considered all material planning considerations, the application is recommended for approval subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions of consent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. But you can see the officer's recommendation on page 24. Can somebody move and second, please?
I'll move.
Thank you. Somebody second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, anybody got any questions? Simon?
Yeah, I've got a question about the internal layout of the building. There's only one bathroom with an integral toilet in that, and that seems to be on the low side. I wonder what planning advice or notes we could put onto this to encourage the developer to actually have a separate toilet and bathroom? It seems to me for 4 independent households in the same building that one single room with a bathroom and toilet, it will be insufficient, as obviously the toilet will be unavailable while somebody's taking a bath, for example.
Dion?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, it's probably unfortunate that there's not another toilet on the property, and I'm sure with a small amount of effort, the property owner could actually add a toilet at the back of the property for one of the tenants anyway, or for the use of any of the tenants. But I take on board your suggestion that maybe we should introduce an informative or an advisory to the planning permission, if it's granted, that adequate facilities are provided for future occupants of the property.
Happy with that, Simon?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see the relevance in what Dion has stated about Cardiff. We're in total different demographic to Cardiff whatsoever, so I'd like to take that out. But it's very interesting. Do we work collaboratively with South Wales Police? Because there seems to be a much larger presence with HMOs. There's been no representation from South Wales Police, or do we not work with them? Thank you, Chair.
I will ask the officer that appropriate question. Dion?
From my experience, we do consult with the police over these changes of use, but we didn't receive any representations on this particular application. I'm dealing with a further HMO up in one of the valleys, and it's for a larger scale HMO of 12 bedrooms, and the police have taken an active interest in that. So I assume that if they're not passing any comment, they're really leaving it to the authority in terms of the planning authority, and also in terms of licensing HMOs to ensure that it's an adequate proposal in the right sort of location.
Okay, thank you for that. Jonathan, you did put your hand up, but it's disappeared. But do you want to speak? Carry on then, and we'll come back to Simon next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, Teams is lowering hands on its own accord. Thank you, Chair. This property is obviously an established 3-bedroom property, and I accept what the officer says, that, you know, a family of 4, so presumably a married couple will live in 1 bedroom and 2 children living in their own separate bedrooms. But this is going to be converted into a 4-bedroom property where presumably all 4 residents will be living in their separate bedrooms. Where is the logic that you can squeeze a 4th bedroom into a 3-bedroom property? It's a terraced house. The houses are, I'm not sure how far they go back historically when they were built, but they're not the biggest properties in the world. So, you know, when I can marry the 4 people in a traditional family unit can live in a 3-bedroom house. But if you are asking 4 people to live in what was once a 3-bedroom house, it's pretty tightly compact in my view. So I'd like to know what the legal background of that is and whether it's permissible. Thank you, Chair.
Dion, please, could you answer that question? Or Jonathan?
I suppose property owners are always looking at the opportunity of intensifying a level of use, and that's exactly what you're seeing in this case. Quite typically, we would see an extension to a property, so an extra bedroom added on the back or up in the loft. So that's the normal solution to it, trying to increase the capacity of a property. In this particular case, I suppose they've got rooms available on the ground floor, and there's no requirement for 2 reception rooms in a house. So I suppose they're trying to utilise one of those rooms as a bedroom to accommodate 1 other person. That's about as much as I can add.
Jonathan?
Yeah, for the purpose of the recording, my name is Jonathan Parsons, Group Manager for Planning and Development Services. Councillor, you have raised what's probably an obvious point I think what you're suggesting is that the size of the property is not large enough to accommodate for what is in effect separate households. I think that's where you're coming from. I think we've got to be careful about the extent of what land use planning is, the function of land use planning in this case, and we're just looking at the land use. Now, there was a very short while ago, under planning, you could have six individual people living in a property of any size without the need for planning permission. And that happened quite a bit. I lived in a shared house years and years ago. But I accept that things have changed and things have moved on. It's not for us under planning to dictate how that house is managed. We can't control that. So in terms of planning, we are very restricted to direct land use impact. How that space inside the house is managed is down to the licensing authority, down to the management company or the landlord. So they will decide how that's actually managed. If there are licensing requirements on rooms and room sizes, that's for the licensing officers to look at. It's not for this particular committee. But I do accept your concerns on that, but it's limited what we can actually look at. We're looking at the direct land use implications of that. I'm sure people in this meeting could give examples where there are perhaps more people living in a terrace house, a smaller house, and where there may be less, or where the facilities are, the shared facilities are better or not. But we just need to look at the direct land use implications as part of this decision. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Jonathan. Simon, please.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about one of the objectives mentioned about preserving this as a standard family home, and I just want us to recognise that the definition of a standard family home has changed over the years. In that, over the last 30 years, there's been a massive increase in single and two-person households, to the point at the moment that 30% of all households are now single-person households. And so it's inevitable that a housing stock that was built predominantly mostly more than 30 years ago, that was built for the standard family at that time, which was a mother and father and two children or whatever, we will have to accommodate that change of population and demand. We know the problems that we have within Bridgend around affordable housing, around small homes, and also on homeless itself, that we see in our centre of Bridgend and other towns every day. So I think we have to be responsive to what the demand for the borough is, and the high demand in the borough at the moment is for accommodation for single people. And in that context, I think we have to look very seriously at any request to consider to change a property into HMO, because it does potentially this takes 4 households rather than 1 household. And I also note that the cost of rented accommodation for a 3-bedroom house like this is probably north of £900 per month, which means that it's actually quite difficult for individual single people to be able to afford that amount of money without a double income. So I think if we look at where the demand for housing is, that we should respond to that by looking at these HMOs. I do also respect the other comments around the size of this one. Makes me a little bit uncomfortable in that it is a traditional small terraced house, and to fit 4 independent people in there, and I already mentioned my comment about the lack of a second toilet within the house is troublesome. So I think we have to be responsive, and we have to know what our residents are not only families, our residents are single people as well, and I think we need to respond to that. So my overall feeling about this is a slight discomfort, but a recognition of the need for this changing demand within our towns. And HMOs will obviously be concentrated towards city centres, and I think the officer is completely right to say that these HMOs, where they are predominantly young people, they are looking towards more to not actually owning cars. Somebody on a minimum wage probably can't afford this property and then also run a car. So I think the officer's comments on that are quite correct. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Stephen, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Couple of questions. Could you tell me whether D2 actually own the property as we speak, or is it that they're asking for planning permission because they're looking to buy the property?
Do you want to do this one at a time?
Or also, it is the parking thing as well that I think the parking provision is so important. It's an intrinsic part of our LDP, and are we going to go against our LDP again?
Okay.
So I'd like to come back after that.
Okay, right, I'll do these in order then. Right, can we? Is he still on the line? James, are you still on the line?
Yep, I'm here.
Right. Did you hear the question? Do you own the property, or are you in the process of buying the property, or can you give the committee please an update of where you are with this property?
So we don't own the property yet. We've offered subject to planning. So obviously, based on today, we'll either buy or not buy the house if we get or don't get the planning.
Ah, right. Okay, that's fair enough. Right, on parking, Lee.
Thank you, Chair. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Lee Tuck. I am the Principal Highways Officer, Highway Development Control. I can't comment on the LDP policy that one of the objectors brought up in relation to it must have adequate parking in HMO. I principally deal with the parking standards, SPG 17. It's been the parking standards for over 10 years now, and that then gives us guidance on what a residential property should have. This being a residential property, it isn't being used, whether it's commercial or not, whether it's a family, whether it's individuals, it's residential. So this property currently has 3 bedrooms and no parking at all. And therefore, as it says in our SPG, if another use comes in, another residential use, you then look at the parking standards, and doesn't currently have any parking, and therefore we can't ask for parking. So if a planning inspector was to look at this, he would say, where is the detriment? Where is the highway safety detriment in this? If a family of 6 moved in and they all had a car, we couldn't do anything about that. So this use is not changing that situation. There is no material change. You know, if all of those 4 people have got a car, then they've got to park on street the same as a family would if it was a family home. So I can't, in all honesty, object to that, because you know, that everyone has to park on the street that live in that street. There is just no option. I note that in the street, a lot of the residents have changed their front gardens into parking spaces and sterilised a lot of on-street parking, which, you know, obviously, as a highway officer, I don't like to see that, because obviously it means that no one, only those residents can park along the street on that point, and it sterilises it for the rest of the community. So, you know, we try and move away from that where we can in these very tight sort of town centre streets. But as I say, it is what it is, in as far as that it's a residential property, a family residential property now with no parking, and it's going to turn into a residential property, and there is no parking provision off street. So there is a nil detriment situation, and that's our stance on that. I mean, I can go to the LDP. The planning officers may be able to speak more on that policy, but that's not something I recognise and use as the highway officer. I have put a question in, just to go back, in regards to the residence parking scheme, and I'm waiting an answer on my colleague on that. Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Please. Do you want to ask a supplementary?
Yeah, so this is planning permission before somebody intends to buy it. So when somebody buys a property, they know exactly what they're getting, aren't they? So if for any reason that the recommendation of the officers wasn't gone with, then D2 would exactly know what they've got, whether they've got permission or not. A resident has told me, I'm not from the Oldcastle ward, but a resident has told me that work has actually started, that they have talked to the contractor and said, I hear this is a HMO. And they said, no, it's not a HMO. It's for a mortgage for a young family. So that would fit into what is there at the moment. It is a traditional residential sort of area. And again, as a councillor sitting here and predetermined looking at the facts. So what is going on is
Well, we'll clarify that point now.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission runs with the land councillor, so regardless of who owns it, who doesn't own it, who's put an offer in, the planning permission runs with the land. So land ownership isn't actually a material factor in this particular case. So it's not uncommon for applicants to submit planning applications on properties that they don't actually own yet. That's quite common. But I'm not quite sure what your concerns are in this regard, but in terms of the determination of this application, we have to stick to the material planning considerations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's just something to consider, isn't it? That if somebody was going to buy it as a family home, such as a local nurse, somebody that we would need. If I rushed into hospital, then I would need a nurse. So affordable housing is important. Homes of multiple occupancy are important. So this is about the land use. It's also about our LDP, of which I would like to explore that, about COM7 and the need for parking off-road. I have a resident who has talked to me who is in a street where there are HMOs. He has said to me that he would like to convert his garage, or have previously wanted to convert his garage, and be told, no, you can't use it for any other purpose other than parking. So if we're not allowing as a planning authority to let somebody turn a garage into an office, because home working is important these days, then how can we approve a dwelling that doesn't have on-site parking? And this again fits in with our LDP and COM7s. So there are lots of grey areas as well.
The office has explained the COM7 policy, and it's in the report. There's no detriment and there's no direct conflict with that policy. The highway officer has highlighted that in parking terms, the property as it stands and the property as proposed, there's no change in the parking requirement. That's the policy position. So I hope that answered that particular question. If this was a new build, a completely new build, then we may need to look at it differently. But in terms of the policy as it stands, there's no need for additional parking as a result of this particular proposal. I'd also like to point out that nurses also live in HMOs as well. I'm not quite sure what the point you're trying to make there, but I'm quite happy to clarify further if you wish.
Last question then. If you're going to ask a question, this is the last one you're going to ask.
For the whole of this, Chair?
Pardon?
For the whole of this? This is my last question.
Well, I have
okay, I'll leave my last question until something else then.
Thank you. Right, Alan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I got a few comments. First of all, having worked both in Cardiff and the Bridgend areas, there's certainly no comparison can be made. It's like comparing apples and pears. Secondly, I would like to concur with all the objections raised by Councillor Ian Williams. They're all valid points. There's obviously great concerns raised by all the residents of the wards of Bridgend, and I've certainly got great concerns. The 3 wards of Bridgend off the town centre are residential areas. They've been Newcastle, Oldcastle and Morver, and that's what they're intended for families, etc., etc. Now, my third comment would be, I'm just wondering about this 10% 50-metre rule in relation to HMOs. Is it fit for purpose in today's day and age? I would certainly raise the question, suggest it's not. Perhaps it should be reviewed with the amount of HMOs occurring in the Bridgend Centre, Bridgend Town Centre wards are increasing, and the residents are raising great concerns because it's affecting their daily lives. And finally, how can you put an HMO with what's gone on in the past within a very short distance of primary school. It beggars the belief, to be perfectly honest with you, Chair. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Alan, for them questions. Jonathan, you can answer them, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure the relevance of residential uses within proximity to schools. There's a lot of residential properties very close to schools. HMOs are residential properties in land use planning terms. If you're inferring that there is antisocial behaviour or criminals residing in them, that's not a matter for this committee. We don't get involved with that. We just look at the land use planning issues, and our limit is land use planning. There are other agencies that look at licensing. There are agencies that look at law and order, and they are best approached if there are issues of antisocial behaviour. In terms of the LDP policy, this is a freshly adopted LDP. This has gone through an extensive examination period, and the inspector is happy with that policy. So it's as new as you can get. I take on board the point that we do seem to be having a number of HMO applications coming before you members. There are 2 on the agenda today. There's likely to be more in the future. And this is something we are aware of. And under the LDP, we have the opportunity to produce further guidance on HMOs going forward. It's called supplementary planning guidance. And that's something we can look at is to set further standards based on the policy that's in the LDP. And that's something we will bring back to members in the future. But at the moment, we can only determine this application on the land use planning grounds. And I accept the comments that were made by the speaker, by your fellow councillor. And yeah, a lot of those are valid concerns, but we are limited in what we can and cannot do under land use planning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know whether officers will be able to answer this, but how long has this property been on the market for? I'll explain why. When we approved the HMO in Park Street, which used to be office space, that it had been vacant for a year. Obviously, there's a reasonable argument that no one wanted it as office space. The building needed to be used, and it was converted into, or in the process of, being converted into a HMO. My concern, and I buy what Councillor Griffiths is saying, that we are seeing a change in demographic of how people live, and that's each to their own. My concern is, and it may not even be relevant for this committee, is that this company is very quickly identifying potential properties and taking them off the market, whereas if you are a private person trying to buy a property, it's a lot longer process. Do I like the house? Do I want to get, can I get a mortgage on it? So, is there an inequality here? Have they snapped it up quite quickly, or is basically no one buying this property? So it's open house, I suppose, pardon the pun. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, I can't answer that question. I don't know how long it's on the market for, and it's not for me to comment on the way the market operates. We can't control that. So I can't really answer that, whether it was on for a while or not. No.
Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I suppose the question's been raised, but I don't believe it's been fully answered properly, because the house as is residential. I understand it'd be for a residential family, but it's going for change of usage, and the LDP does state about car parking. So it's, as much as it's going to still be residential, it's applying for a change of use. So I'd just like a bit more clarity on it, please, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, the highway officers clarified this, that in parking terms, the property as existing and the property as proposed, the parking requirement is exactly the same. There is no requirement. There is no parking currently. There is no parking requirement for the future use. It's a residential use, so there's no difference in terms of parking for both the existing and the proposed parking area. As the highway officers point.
I'll have to ask you to leave, Ian.
Yeah, I'll do that in a minute, but I'll just finish that point. We'll read out the relevant policy for you.
Do you want to sit and listen to that, Ian?
But in terms of the parking provision, there is no difference. As the highway officer said, you could have a family of 4 people, each with a car, and we couldn't control that. So the difference is there's no difference in the parking requirement. Phil is going to read out the policy.
Right. Read out the policy, Phil, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's in the report, members, and it's COM 7. It says the proposal is a criteria. The proposal incorporates on-site parking provision, and here's the fundamental bit, or demonstrates that it will not have an adverse effect on local parking provision. And obviously Lee has given his evidence as to why he doesn't believe it will have an adverse impact. So that's the policy. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Does that clear that point up, Mark?
Thank you, Chair. It's just confusing as it's a change of use, and I thought we'll leave it where it is, but it's over. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Ian. Duncan Evans?
Sorry, it's me, James Driscoll. Just ended Duncan Evans' name.
Right.
I just wanted to address the point about how long the property's been on the market for. It's been up for sale since November 2023.
Okay, thank you for that information. Okay, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Lee have already said that the parking within St Mary Street isn't ideal at the moment, and yet we've had an officer to sort of say, well, there's no evidence that there would be adverse parking if 4 people were to accommodate that property and bring 4 cars. So I don't understand how, if you were to look on Google Maps, you'd see the street is absolutely crammed with cars, except for the area around the school. So somebody in this authority have thought that school and that side entrance is important. This side entrance is right next to a HMO. It would be next to a residential. The room that is a sitting room at the moment is going to become a bedroom right on the pavement. So you can't talk about the way that people live. You don't talk about the way that people are going to draw their curtains or not. It's not very private for them. It's not appropriate for all the children that are going to be queuing up there. I don't know if you guys know where St Mary Street is. I don't know if you know what it's like at 9 o'clock in the morning. It is absolute chaos. So despite who's going to live there, then to add possibly 4 extra vehicles, and it being the LDP, and Lee have concerns about already the over-intensification of vehicles. Never mind over-intensification of HMOs in the area. So this parking thing, I don't think is going to go away.
Okay. Lee?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I know the street very well. My wife works at the solicitors at the end of the road. I have to drop her off at work every morning. I experience the traffic. There's traffic everywhere in Bridgend. Can't get away from that. Wherever I go, I seem to come across traffic. That's the situation. The policy is clear. It says adverse effect. Adverse being worse than what is there now. So how will this be worse than what is there now? All of those people that live in that house who could buy it tomorrow have to park on that street. If it turns into a HMO, they've got to park on the street. Where is the adverse? Where is the impact? Because it's the same. I don't understand the point you're making. You know, it's the family that could buy it tomorrow could have 4 cars, and the HMO could have 4 cars. Where is the difference? There is no adverse difference. At some point, this house is going to generate cars on that street. And I can't, you know, and so when I look at this, I have to think, right, what is the position now and what will the position be? And then I also think about what a planning inspector would say, and he would say, well, actually, there is no difference. You know, what are you saying here? Where is the highway safety? You know, there is traffic everywhere, there's parking issues everywhere. You know, I've just had a response back from my traffic management officer. She gets lots of complaints. They are, again, looking at the residential parking permit. It is something they are trying to desperately bring forward for this site, for this road. So there are plans in place in order to improve the situation, but it's just like any other, you know, I've got friends that live in Grove Road, the next street along, same situation. You know, I go and visit him, I can't park, I have to park a long way away. So if you can sort of advise me where you think the adverse, which is what the policy says, or demonstrate an adverse parking situation, then I can sort of probably tackle that. But as it stands, the house...
It won't take much to make a bad situation worse. So it's not going to get better. No. So it will get worse. It's right near a school. There are actually barriers there to protect our young ones. I don't know how that actually sort of fits in with the future generations, but these future generations at 9 o'clock are going in there. I can see Jonathan looking and sort of saying, sort of, where is the harm? Because that's what you always ask, Jonathan. I think what we've heard today, is there going to be any harm? Residents certainly think so. I can't talk about the type of people because they may be very nice people, like Dion have said. We can't look at the type of people. We can't look at any potential antisocial behaviour. I think going forward that when we approve these things, if there is antisocial behaviour, we say nothing to do with us, it's a police responsibility. But we have actually approved it. And we as councillors in this committee are here to actually discuss and debate about, is there going to be any harm? So going back to my thing, is there going to be less harm or is there going to be more harm? And what I've heard today, I think there is harm, Jonathan.
I'm going to come back in, Chair. Yeah, in planning terms, the officer's recommendation is that approval that we do not consider there would be any land use planning harm there. If you feel differently, members, you can vote against this application, but you will have to demonstrate that harm in strict land use planning terms. A planning inspector is not going to look at what a resident 2 streets away thinks or what somebody else thinks. He's going to look, or she's going to look, at the land use planning impacts. So that's down to you, members. You don't have to accept the officer's advice, but if you go against that, you will have to defend that at an appeal, and you will have to put that argument forward where you think the harm is, and you will have to justify that. I'm trying to provide you with a professional advice. It's up to you, members, what you wish to do with that. And professional view is that this proposal is not contrary to planning policy. It will not generate harm. It's a residential use going to a residential use. I fully understand and take on board the concerns that some residents and you as members have, because you've got a difficult job in having to balance the views of your constituents and residents with your role as a planning authority. I understand it's a difficult position, but I got to bring it back. We're only here to make planning decisions. If the harm that you're referring to is antisocial behaviour, indiscriminate parking, potential for impact on children, that's not for us to make those decisions. There are other agencies that are better equipped and more responsible to deal with those issues. It's not a land use planning matter, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it. But it's up to you, members, what you wish to do. If you feel strongly enough to vote against officer recommendation, you can do so, but you will have to put those reasons in material planning terms. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Della Hughes, please.
Hi, what I was going to say, really, Jonathan has just sort of said it, really. I think just what I want to say is obviously we are seeing more of these applications, and I do understand when residents are concerned about who may be living in a HMO. But ultimately, as Jonathan has said, we're looking at the land use There could be people move into a HMO, things are absolutely fine, it's managed well, there's absolutely no impact. But we do see times where there are HMOs where there are issues. And for the public, I understand, you know, why they think, why have planning permission been given for that, knowing that sometimes things happen in HMOs that they might not be happy with, antisocial behaviour, etc. But as we know, ultimately the police or shared regulatory services are there to deal with those matters. But I do understand when people are worried and they with a perception of how a certain establishment is going to be managed. And I really do get it. And, you know, we are there to represent our residents, the same as I would be if it was in an area I lived. But looking at the application, I can't see a material reason to refuse it. And there are other agencies when there are issues. But also, I do understand when a problem becomes really bad and the public don't feel like other departments, like the police and shared regulatory services, are dealing with it effectively. So it is really tricky. It is a really tricky one. But looking at it, I can't see a material reason to refuse the application.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes, for that. Bob Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the point's been laboured, but specifically, I just wanted to come back to the adverse effect that's been discussed. On the balance of probabilities, an HMO, which is effectively going to be 4 separate dwellings, is much more likely to have more cars than a single family purchase of that terrace. So I just want to go back to the officer that requested sort of an evidence of some adverse effects. I don't know how these things work first time on this committee, but to me, it seems quite obvious that on a probability basis, there's much more likely with 4 dwellings to be more vehicles than a single family use purchase of that property.
Okay, we'll ask the Highways Officer to reiterate what he said previously. Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for that question. Yeah, so the adverse effect. Now, having done this for a number of years now, sort of 10, 15 years, we see the type of resident for HMO generally does not have a car. If they're in a situation where they require HMO, car ownership is low. The evidence I have for that is that Valleys to Coast undertook a parking study of some of their properties, and we found that car ownership was extremely low. And so, and those were sort of family type flats with single people in sometimes and sometimes families. So the evidence base that I work from is that very unlikely that there will be 4 separate vehicles. And that is why, as the planning officer said, these are generally found in town centre locations because they need to have access to public transport. They need to have access to the train and bus station. And with this particular application, I have asked for cycle parking to be put in because we find that cycle parking is really important to HMO users. It's something they ask for. And also we need to promote active travel as part of legislation. So the evidence base I work from shows me that the car ownership is very low. Obviously, we don't want to stifle car ownership and take that away from people. But again, it's more likely that a household with two parents and 2 adult children will have 4 cars. We do find that, and we find that these houses are increasingly being used for those reasons. They don't, you know, the housing market means that, you know, they can't have a big house elsewhere. Terraced houses. My friend has got 2 adult children, and they both live at home with a car. So the adverse effect is just not demonstrated. It doesn't need to be demonstrated because, you know, our experience as professional officers shows us that HMOs car ownership is very, very low. And I don't have any evidence to the contrary of that. Okay, Councillor?
Yeah, thanks. That's actually very useful information. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Right, Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. No, sorry, go back to parking again. I think the confusion here in parts is if I wanted to buy, if I was looking for a new property and I spotted this one, obvious thing, same as everyone else would do. Is it close to my work? Is it anywhere near to go in? What's parking like outside? I'd probably dismiss this property quite quickly on the grounds that I have 2 cars. There's, in my private view, there's nowhere to park my car. So I go, well, I'm not going to buy that property. I think maybe on the argument that it's been on the market since November 2023, private property are of the same opinion. I think the confusion comes because there's now we're introducing a change of use. Why aren't the policies kicking in on about parking? Because it's a change of use, whereas I think I'm gathering, and if I'm correct on it, because it's residential to residential, there were different type of residential property. The new policies don't really have to kick in. If I wanted to convert that property into an office, would there be a whole array of different policies that I'd have to adhere to? Yeah. But because it's residential to residential, though a change of use, it's somewhat minimal in law terms, I suppose. I'm just checking I'm right on that. Thank you, Chair.
Jonathan, please.
Yeah, if it wasn't a residential use, there may be a different take on the planning situation, and if you had visiting visitors to the property on a regular basis, on a commercial basis, yes. But I think Lee has put the situation out quite succinctly, that in terms of parking, these two uses are the same. There's no parking at the moment. There's no requirement for parking, and that's what our SPG would say. It's also located close to the town centre. It's close to transport hubs. It may be a property that somebody who can't rely on a car would be interested in, possibly. But Lee has also mentioned that based on evidence, HMO occupants are of low levels of car ownership. But there may be more reliance on public transport and cycling. So based on the evidence that we got, we've made that balanced recommendation. But you're right, if it was a different use, then we'd have to maybe think again. But this is a residential use. Yep.
Well, I can't see anybody else asking any questions, so it's been moved and seconded. Are we all in favour of it, or is anybody going to object?
I object, Chair. I object, Chair.
Okay, then, so we'll take a vote on it then, please, Mark. Can we call the names out, please? Let's take a vote.
Councillor Barrow, please.
Against.
Councillor Chris Davis.
Against.
Councillor Easterbrook. Abstain. Councillor Granville.
For.
Councillor Griffiths. Simon.
For.
Councillor Delahughes.
For.
Councillor John.
Against.
Councillor Kern.
For.
Councillor Kendall.
For.
Councillor Pratt. For. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wathen.
Yeah, against.
Councillor Williams.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Llewellyn Hopkins, did you join for this item for the whole of it from the commencement of Councillor Ian Williams' speech, please?
No, I didn't. I was slightly late, sorry.
Okay, you're not allowed to vote then, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, thanks.
Was 841, Mark?
Against.
Can I get that right? Yeah, 8-4,
Yeah.
and one abstention.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
That's passed then, okay? Just for the record, it's 8-4, 4 against, and 1 abstention. Okay, we go on to the next one. Thank you all members. Just to explain, because it was a bit dubious in the last meeting, and I didn't explain it. Councillor Belstow's not here. His statement is going to be read out by the solicitor, and the Eric Sullivan is also going to be read out by the solicitor, and we've got Jamie Wilson, who is in person in the meeting, who will be speaking at the podium, just for everybody to know how it's going to run, okay? So I will hand over now to the solicitor.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm reading on behalf of Councillor Stephen Bledsoe in respect of agenda item 9. Good morning, Chair and member of the Development Committee. We make joint representation to you on the application for 65 Ackland Road, Bridgend, as 2 of the 3 elected councillors for Bridgend Central. The other being Councillor Easterbrook, who is on your committee and cannot make such representations. We apologise for not being able to be with you today, but existing commitments have made it impossible for either of us to attend. We are here again expressing our concerns over yet another HMO in the area around Bridgend Town Centre, an area that cannot cope with additional pressures on the infrastructure there. The entire area around Ackland Road, Morpher Street and Minerva Street, along with the smaller roads of Charles Street, Vernon Street, Herbert Street and Highview are creaking. There is a local school which adds to these pressures. It regularly becomes dangerous with the number of vehicles there, and to add additional occupancies here is going to make it even worse. The staff at the school already have to provide supervision at drop-off and pick-up times. The area is just full already. The pressures on the area here have led to the residents to ask for greater parking enforcement to keep it safe and under control. In fact, this area is so bad that in the recent dismissal of the Mulberry Homes application for land off Warnskill Avenue, which is just a few hundred yards from this application, the PEDU report refers to the area as densely developed under paragraph 6 placemaking. There are already too many HMOs in the very close area of Morpher Street. The entire area has been changed by the removal of much needed family homes and turning them into multiple single occupancy rooms within houses. This will be the loss of a much needed family home in the area. Yes, we need single room accommodation, but we also need small family homes, of which this is one, and we will create greater problems if we lose them. In the rush to create single room accommodation, we cannot lose small family homes. On the basis that this would be the loss of a family home and the pressures that this would put on the surrounding infrastructure, that is already at breaking point, we ask that you do not grant this application the permission it seeks. Thank you.
Okay, Eric Sullivan now, please.
Yeah, sorry. Right, again, I'm the Solicitor Committee and I read this on behalf of Mr. E. Sullivan, letter dated 10th of May 2024. Dear Sir, I strongly oppose the plans for 65 Ackland Road for many reasons. The house is far too small for the proposed developments. It should be sold as a family home and to people who will look after it. Past experience shows that landlords install DHSS tenants who, like the landlords, have little interest in keeping the property maintained and in a tidy condition. The tenants also have a liking for small, aggressive type dogs, which terrified us when they leapt the garden wall, and as we are a few feet lower than their side, the dogs could not leap back again. We had to stay indoors till the owner arrived to deal with them. These tenants also brought their drug problems with them to our area. HMOs will also so compound our already chaotic car parking situation. Please give due consideration to my comments. Regards, Eric Sullivan. Stop.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Wilson, would you like to come down to the podium? You'll have 5 minutes. Once you start speaking, press the button, the red button, and then time will start.
Good morning, Chair. Morning, councillors. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. So, Tenby Property has been set up after a number of years of my business partner and I and other ventures to, the goal is to create more housing and support that priority in Bridgend. We're specifically looking at houses or homes where there's a need for renovation. So these homes are not lived in. So we're going into homes that are in significant state of disrepair or have been empty for a number of months or years that needs, if you like, full renovation, of which Ackland Road is one of those homes. So we were debating and fully understanding here the comments, the noise around what a HMO is. It conjures up many different descriptives and adjectives about what that looks like. So our view was how do we take that area and focus away from the normal, if you like, or what people perceive a HMO to be, and focus in an area which is a little bit more structured and different. So in doing that, we've partnered up with the Princess of Wales Hospital. So our goal here is to provide accommodation for doctors and nurses who arrive outside of the UK and come to the UK and specifically come to Princess of Wales Hospital. The reason we've partnered with the hospital is they have accommodation on site. So once you arrive in this country, you are placed in a temporary accommodation that's housed within the Princess of Wales accommodation compound. After 6 months, you're required to move out to other accommodation. What the hospital are finding at the moment is the doctors and nurses won't move out. There's not suitable accommodation they feel for them. They're staying. They're ultimately bed blocking. So they're bed blocking the hospital and they're bed blocking their own accommodation. They then can't bring in more doctors and nurses from outside the UK. We've offered exclusive use of 65 Ackland Road for the Princess of Wales Hospital doctors and nurses. A combination of either an all-male, an all-female, or a mixed-gender environment where we create a safe, sustainable place for a group of nurses, a group of doctors who have a shared goal, shared common interest. They have the same job. They have potentially the same shift patterns or other shift patterns. The reason we've done this is, again, through feedback from the hospital. That's what they're looking for. The hospital staff call around estate agents, asking for homes where they can provide 2, 3, or 4 nurses and doctors who want to live together. They can't just go to a family home because of change of use implications. So we're hopefully going to answer that question, that the hospital have that challenge with 65 Ackland Road. The queries around and the report I've read around parking and extensively here today is absolutely, we're aware of that. My business partner and I, we spend a lot of time at the house currently. We have a van, we have a skip, and we have another vehicle. So we're taking up ultimately right now 3 spaces, and we're able to park those every day. The skip will be removed from the front of the house, which will create a space. We have a double garage at the back of the house, which had a very poor garage door. We've since taken that garage door away, now installed a roller shutter at our expense. That roller shutter is electric with fob to allow for parking for a vehicle. What's really important for this, whilst we're trying to solve the parking challenges for Ackland Roads, is any doctor and nurse that does move to the UK and work, they're not allowed to drive for 6 months. So they'll be moving to us. They're then also at the end of that 6-month tenure, when they may decide to drive and have to go through testing procedure, they tend not to drive. They want to be within a public transport environment. So we're seeing that, again, from feedback from the hospital, there's no requirement for a significant number of car parking spaces as well. So it's our intention, based on feedback, is there'll be limited requirement for car in 65 Ackland Road. We've got 2 nurses lined up already. So we've reached out to the hospital, we put some posters up, and we have them who are ready to go. They don't drive, and they're still under their 6-month probationary period, so there's no real requirement right now for car. I can't say, likewise, councillors today, I can't say what will happen in the future. But again, we see a need where there's no vehicle provision. Thank you.
That you finished? Okay, thank you very much for that. Well in time. Thank you very much. Okay, we go now to the officers. Dion, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning again, committee. For the purposes of this recording, my name is Dion Douglas and I'm Principal Planning Officer here at Bridgend Council. Apologies for what I'm about to read out or say, because it's going to sound very familiar, because this application and the previous application obviously are very, very similar, so apologies. The proposal involves a change of use of a 2-bedroom dwelling to a 4-bedroom HMO. The terrace property is located at 65 Ackland Road on the eastern side of Bridgend Town Centre, close to the Pennybont Primary School, and I'd estimate the property to be, as the crow flies, about 500 metres away from the bus station in Bridgend. In short, the proposal involves a new ground floor bedroom and the large front-facing bedroom divided into 2 rooms. A communal lounge diner, kitchen and bathroom facilities will be provided along with a shared amenity space to the rear of the terrace property, along with the retention of the double garage. There will be no additions or extensions made to the building. The property's got a bathroom upstairs, I think, and a toilet downstairs. So that separates it from the previous HMO that we've looked at. Representations have been received from Bridgend Town Council and Councillor Bledsoe raising concerns over the proposal. 17 letters of objection were also received from occupiers of surrounding residential properties. Concerns raised include highway pedestrian safety, over-intensification of HMOs in the area, loss of family housing, impacts on residential amenity, noise and antisocial behaviour, and the increase in waste and recycling on the street. I've considered the application against National Planning Policy and Guidance and the replacement LDP. The application site is located within the main settlement of Bridgend, and the proposal would be supported by Policy COM 6 residential density, and that the development would contribute to a mixed, socially inclusive and sustainable community by providing a range of house types and sizes. The proposal has been considered against Policy COM 7 HMOs and considered to be compliant with its criteria. In short, there are no other recorded HMOs within 50 metres of the application property. Secondly, there are no alterations or extensions proposed which would alter the character or appearance of the property. Thirdly, the scale and intensity of residential use is considered compatible with adjoining and nearby uses. The property is sustainably located and benefits from on-site car parking, and cycle parking can be provided. Waste storage and outdoor amenity spaces available at the rear of the property. And finally, at the size proposed, 4 bedrooms, it is not considered that the proposal would have an unacceptably adverse impact on residential amenity. Turning to transportation, they've been considered by our highways officer, who has no objection to the change of use. It is noted that the property is located in a highly sustainable area close to the town centre. The officer notes that the nature of accommodation proposed, it's likely that there'll be a lower level of car ownership, and I think that's borne out by what we've heard from the applicant today. I previously gave the example of my son living in an HMO. I won't repeat that. I trust I've adequately outlined and addressed the key matters surrounding this change of use application. In conclusion, and having considered all material planning considerations, the application is recommended for approval subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions of consent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Dion. You can see the recommendation on page 39. Can somebody formally move it with the amendment?
Move, Chair.
Thank you. Somebody second it?
Second.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions they'd like to ask? Jonathan, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we pretty much exhausted all the questions in the last one, but just for a point of fairness, I asked the same question in the last application. This is a 2-bedroom property, which is now going to be converted into a 4-bedroom property. Is this in keeping with our procedures? Thank you, and policies. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Dion.
I did consider that, and when I was looking at the property, and if you have a look at the floor plans for the property as it currently is, it's got actually a large front-facing bedroom with 2 windows. And I don't know for sure, but I suspect that the property was probably built as a 3-bedder rather than the 2. So I suppose the responses and the comments that we made on the previous application also apply to this. It may have been a 3-bedder being converted into 4. It's located in an area, obviously, of terrace properties that are probably 2 or 3 bedroom, but in the wider area there's some larger detached and semi-detached houses, so it fits in quite comfortably with those. And finally, I suppose it's quite a large property at the rear anyway. There's a good size amenity space, and obviously there's a good size garage there. So it's probably slightly different from the St Marie Street one. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. With the applicant's statement saying that people coming in can't drive for 6 months, well, they're staying in a POW for 6 months. So that to me is totally irrelevant, because after they've left there to go to HMO, they can apply to learn to drive. It's an open and nothing statement to me, really. But then I go on to what Dean said, 500 metres as the crow flies. Well, the walking distance is the relative thing, not 500 metres as a crow flies, because as I'm sure you know, it's not many of us can fly. Thank you, Chair.
A good point, Mark. Can you perhaps reiterate exactly what the distance is, please, Dion?
I'd have to measure that off Google Maps. I'm sorry, but yeah, I did qualify that as the crow flies, because that's the direct distance between the application property and the bus exchange. I'd probably add another 100 metres to that if you were following the public highway.
Jonathan will come in now.
I think the point is that it's within walking distance, reasonable walking distance.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions? Oh, Councillor Pratt, you've
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just popped into my head. The applicant's talking about housing nurses and doctors, which is, you know, an honourable thing and useful thing for our National Health Service. And I'll thank the applicant for that. Do we have any control if this applicant sells the property and becomes another type of HMO, shall we say? Rather so, I mean, we could approve this on the grounds, great, we're housing doctors and nurses, that's great. And then in 6 months' time, we've got antisocial behavioural problems and things like that. And I don't want to be caught out on that type of thing. So just a view, I think I can guess what the officer's going to say, but a view for the record would be useful. Thank you, Chair.
Jonathan, take that up.
Yeah, no, your suspicions are probably correct. We can't sort of limit it to a particular employment area or a particular type of person. That could be controlled by the applicant or by the owner. But we couldn't do it in a land use planning terms, the same as we couldn't control a house. We couldn't control who lives in there. I wouldn't like to have that ability, to be perfectly honest. It's not for us to decide who lives in what properties.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I can't see anybody else asking any questions, so the simple answer is, are we all in favour of this application? Well, I can't see anybody say no, so I take it it's unanimous then. Yeah? Okay, thank you for that, colleagues. That's passed unanimously. If we go to item 10, I'm not going to ask any questions this. Has any members got any questions they'd like to ask on item 10? Because you should have read it, and it will give you exactly what people's decisions are and everything else. If anybody's got a query on it, please ask the question. If you're happy with it, obviously, you don't have to ask the questions. Well, that's okay. That's done then. Item 11. Adam, I think you're going to take us on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. For the benefit of the recording, Adam Prevost, Planning Policy Team Leader. Members, you'll be aware that the replacement LDP was adopted back in March, but policy development doesn't stop there. It's imperative for us to prepare a suite of supplementary planning guidance documents, SPGs, to support the newly adopted LDP. These won't change the policies in the LDP, but they will provide more detailed guidance around different themes and add weight to those adopted policies. In terms of process, once an initial draft SPG is prepared, it will be subject to public consultation for 6 weeks before being finalised and then reported to Council for approval. Adopted SPGs will then become material considerations in determining future planning applications and will prove key to the successful delivery of our allocated sites. The first 3 SPGs scheduled for production are firstly recreation facilities, to clarify the level and the type of provision required on different sites, and also a new formula for calculating costs. Secondly, affordable housing, to outline the mechanisms for securing affordable housing on residential sites, and also to specify new transfer costs now that Welsh Government has stopped publishing them. And thirdly, retail and commercial development, to provide more clarity on the types of development we expect to see and are appropriate for our commercial centres. Other SPGs will follow in due course, and we have a very long list to prepare to keep us busy. But currently, I mean, the purpose of me coming here today is to seek 3 member volunteers to act as champions in progressing those first 3 SPGs towards approval. And this approach has worked well in the past, and it's something we're keen to continue with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Well, I'll put my name forward. I'd like to do affordable housing. Have we got any other nominees for what's just been said? Simon?
So I'd like to think of the possibility of adding to this list, please, Chair. We've had 2 HMOs today, which we are finding difficult to get our heads around, I think, and we've had many HMOs in the past, and I wonder whether we could add to this list an SPG on HMOs, please. And if that is accepted, I'd be happy to volunteer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we can certainly add that to the list. The reason that we've got these SPGs in front of you at the moment, the priority is given to them is because of the large-scale developments we've got coming through our LDP, and the fact that there's a lot of Section 106 financial contributions tied up with that. So that's why these have been prioritised at the moment. But given the discussion at committee today and previous committees and probably future committees, I think we need to also move the HMO SPG up the line. And funny enough, this was raised a number of years ago, actually, as to whether we should be having an SPG on HMOs. But at the time, we had very few applications. But the regulations have changed since then. So I think it's something we'll need to work on as well. And also we need to look at car parking standards, and that's something else that it's going to take up a lot of time. And updating car parking standards. So we can put it on the list of things to do, Councillor Griffiths, and I thank you for volunteering to champion that particular SPG going forward. It's a very thorny issue, and yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Jonathan, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't mind doing the outdoor recreation facilities. It is a bit of a thorn in my side. We're residents here that Section 106 money is being laid aside for recreation facilities, and you don't see them for years and years and years. So I think if we can look at putting more demanding timeframes on developers for recreation facilities rather than the forgotten ghost that sometimes they become. I'm happy to champion that and speak to officers. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I know that if we want more than one member to do each item, they can, and I know that Councillor Barrow was interested in doing recreation as well. Tony, wasn't he? Yeah. So I would propose that Tony also goes on it with yourself. I'm happy to share. Yeah, so the workload can be shared then, can't it? Yeah.
Well, you want the swings and you can have the roundabouts.
What you lose on the swings, you gain.
Exactly. Jonathan, your hand's still up. Does anybody else want to take, what's the last one? Retail. Can somebody take retail? Della, do you like retail? No? Okay. Rob, retail? Oh, Easterbrook, ideal. Ideal man, yes. Sorry.
Do I have to make a personal and prejudicial interest in retail? Is somebody?
No, that's fine. We'll take that on. Yeah,
okay.
we've done the first 3.
So I can have an interest in this one then.
You
Chair.
can.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Adam, are we all done?
I'll just come back.
Oh, sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah. Thanks very much for volunteering for taking these forward. The role for you as members is, as I said, it's a champion role. It's for you to help shape the policy. We like to have members having some ownership of planning policy. It's very difficult to do that to the main LDP itself because there's so much involved with that, and there's a lot of outside scrutiny on it. But we have more control over the SPG that flows from our LDP, which is adopted. So we'd like members to have control. So when it comes to committee, you've got a better. You can say, well, yeah, I was involved in that. I can understand that. So what will happen next? And Adam will probably be in touch with you, and we'll be arranging some sessions to go through what we've drafted out already. And the next step then would be bring these specific items back to committee as a workshop session. So all members can have a discussion on the SPG. So we'll do it in a workshop format, round the table, which always works better. And then we need to go to consultation, and then we come back with those comments and look at what was being said and whether we need to alter that document. But eventually it has to go to council for approval. SPG, it needs council approval, as did the LDP. So it's a slightly drawn out process, but that's for a reason. Once it's gone through the consultation, it's gone through council approval, it's got a substantial weight.
Yeah.
So the next couple of training sessions may well be, one of them might be on SPG as a workshop session. And we value, I genuinely say we value member engagement in these processes, and particularly where members have got knowledge, personal knowledge and on specific areas, because that's invaluable when we form in policy. Anything more you wanted to add to that?
Can I just say, just to add on to that, that the consultation will take 6 weeks, just for members to know. It's out there, it's in the public realm for 6 weeks, so they can make observations or whatever they want to do, and then it comes back to us. Okay, thank you for that, Adam. Number 12, the training log. You can all see that. PEDU, Public Rights of Way, Tree Policy. That will be integrated with the SPGs as we go forward to try and move it all forward. So is there everybody, can just somebody note that? Thank you, Tony. Okay. Urgent items, nothing's been brought to my attention as urgent items. So I will thank everybody for attending today, and safe journey home to the people in the chamber.